Hi everybody, it's Chris at the Vinyl Orchard back with a video. I haven't done one of these for a very long time, so I thought I'd jump in on the thread that's going around YouTube on the vinyl community, and that's the vinyl tag of 2023. So thank you very much to Rob Walker for sharing the questions as he did recently, and this is my responses to those questions, so tell me what you think in the comments below. So the first question is your favourite new release of 2022. Now, as a rule, I don't buy new vinyl. In fact, the only piece of new vinyl I bought last year is the answer to a later question. So I'm just going to show you one album that's one of the favourite albums that I found in 2022, and it's this album by Muddy Waters, the London Sessions. So this is part of a series, London Sessions series. This is the one that came before, and the idea was to join up US blues musicians with UK blues musicians and rock musicians, and obviously this is no exception. This has got Steve Winwood on it. It's got Mitch Mitchell of Jimi Hendrix fame, who previous to Jimi Hendrix played with Georgie Fame, who is also on here, as is Rory Gallagher. And Rory Gallagher is without a doubt one of my favourite musicians, a tremendous guitar player who I think he's at his absolute best when he's playing the blues, and he plays on Young Fashioned Ways and I'm Ready on here, maybe others as well, but definitely those two. Great album. I believe Muddy Waters didn't like this album very much, but I love it. So one of my favourite albums. The next is the last band that you saw live. Now, I haven't seen a live act for a very long time. The closest venue to me is in Bristol. It's about an hour away, and that's where I saw Alice Cooper, but that's quite a few years back now. And I need to change my kind of habits with regards to going to gigs and really seek out some new acts and whatever to see. But anyway, that's the last band that I saw. The first band I ever saw was supporting Status Quo. It was in 1974. It was at Bournemouth Winter Gardens, and it was this band, Montrose. So this is their debut album from 50 years ago this year, actually. Features a very young Sammy Hagar. This is without a doubt one of the best hard rock debuts of all time. So if that's your genre of music you like, I'm sure you would have heard of this. If you haven't, it's really worth seeking out, as is the undubbed version of it, which features on YouTube, which is absolutely tremendous, if not even better, actually. So that's I think one of the best debut albums of all time, and certainly an album where their first album was their best. For me, though, the greatest debut of all time is this one. This is the first album by Boston, the brainchild of a guy called Tom Schultz, who played virtually all the instruments on this album and then enlisted a few band members in the final stages. But a tremendous debut album. I don't think that, well, I know they didn't ever better it, and for me, alongside pronounced Leonard Skinner, Van Halen, Montrose, the first album by The Clash, there are some examples of some wonderful debut albums. So this is tremendous. In fact, the first side of this, which has More Than a Feeling, which we all know, and I absolutely love that song, Peace of Mind and Foreplay Long Time, that's one of the best sides of vinyl ever. So tremendous album, they never bettered it. The next question is a hat trick, show the vinyl, CD and cassette. Now, I'm not a big cassette collector at all, but I am a big Deep Purple collector. And so I've got all the cassettes of their bands before they broke up in 76. So here's the first album from the Mark II version of the band. This is their classic album. Probably their best, maybe up there with Machine Head in terms of their best album. This is in rock. There's the cassette version. It came out as a 25th anniversary version back in the late 90s, so on CD with a few studio outtakes and so on, as is quite commonplace nowadays. So that's a tremendous album. And of course I've got the vinyl, so I've got the original pressing from 1970. That's an immaculate original copy. But being a collector, you have all the versions of it. So I've also got the French version, which comes, of course, on a lovely purple vinyl. And I've also got a Czechoslovakian version of it as well, which comes on green vinyl for some strange reason. The Russian version, similar cover but with some Russian writing, and obviously the track listing is in Russian. The Greek version is a very slightly different coloured cover in a single sleeve. The German version is different again with a different kind of colour scheme. That's on Hor Zoo Records. Now the 25th anniversary came out on CD, also came out as a coloured vinyl version as well. So there's the 25th anniversary vinyl version of In Rock. And last one is it also came out in picture disc in '85 when they reformed the band. So there we go, there's my collection of In Rock. Next one is an album that starts and ends with the same letter. So I thought this was going to be really problematic. And I realised when I was looking at the questions that Rob had set that actually playing at that precise moment was this album by Lynyrd Skynyrd, Street Survivors. So this is their last studio album before they sadly lost several members, Cassie Gaines, Steve Gaines, and Ronnie Van Zant in a tragic plane crash. And I think this cover was, incredibly poignant at the time. And I think in the US the cover looked like that. But this is certainly one of their best albums. So their last studio album. But there's a band actually whose, I think the majority of their catalogue starts and finishes with the same letter. The band is Asia. This is their debut from the sort of early 80s. So kind of a super group. And I think pretty much all of their albums, Aura, Alpha, Asia, all start and end with the same letter, in this case A. Next question, someone born in the same year. So Eva Cassidy, Yngwie Malmsteen, Johnny Marr, they were all born in my year, which is 1963, so a significant year this year, as was George Michael, actually, and Andrew Ridgeley. They were also born in 63. And as was, bringing it down a notch, little Jimmy Osmond, and there's his song from, I guess this is about 1973, so 50 years ago, Long Haired Lover from Liverpool. Next question is the most listened to album in 2022. The most listened to album is also by the most listened to artist, so I'm going to combine these two. So the album is Teaser by Tommy Bolin. Now, I've had this for a very, very long time, but I've really got into this album again recently. And part of that is down to the fact that there exists numerous kind of versions of the of that album. This is the CD version, which has got very, very different mixes, extended mixes, and kind of pre-release stuff on it, which is a really interesting collection. And also these two as well, Whips and Roses 1 and 2, which have got, again, some of the versions from that album. So I'm really getting into, again, back into Tommy Bolin. Tommy Bolin started out in Sioux City, Iowa, I think, and played with a band called Zephyr. And the beauty of Tommy Bolin is he can play it all. He can play blues, as he does on this album. He can play rock, and he can play jazz. And in fact, when he got the gig with Deep Purple, so this is the only album that he recorded with Deep Purple, he did get that gig on the back of his wonderful performances on this album by Billy Cobham. This is from 1973, and the classic jazz fusion album that is Spectrum features Jan Hammer and some absolutely incendiary guitar from Tommy Bolin. So he could play it all. Much maligned player, really, because he, with Deep Purple, recorded one of the worst live albums ever, which is this one, where notoriously he fell asleep on his arm, and his arm went numb and he couldn't play. They only play bar chords, and they recorded the concert where he was obviously unable to play, and the result is really poor. But if you want to hear him at his best, then obviously bootlegs exist where you can hear just how well Tommy Bolin can play rock music, but I think where he's at his best is where he's playing fusion. The improvisation that he demonstrates is just sensational. So Mind Transplant by Alphonse Mouzon is a tremendous example of that, and he is just brilliant on this album. And you may also know him from the time that he was with the James Gang. So he did this album, Miami, and an album called Bang as well with that band. So tremendous player, really got into Tommy Bolin, back into Tommy Bolin over the last 12 months or so. Question number 9 is Australian artist or band. And for me, there aren't that many, but one that really stands out is Australian punk band called The Saints, who did a string of absolutely fantastic singles in the time 77, 78. So there's their debut on Power Exchange, which is Stranded, which is the name also of their debut album. There's One Way Street, back with Erotic Neurotic, that's from 77, from their first album. One of the classic punk singles of all time, This Perfect Day, which came out in 77. The 1, 2, 3, 4 EP features a couple of covers, and also One Way Street and Demolition Girl, wonderful. And I love this song. This is just amazing. Know Your Product. That's from '78. Know Your Product appeared on this album, which is their second album, Eternally Yours, which also has This Perfect Day. Slightly more polished version of The Saints compared with their debut. This is the Australian copy, their debut album. Just brilliant. I think we lost Chris Bailey recently, actually. But a wonderful vocalist, great band. And this is their kind of rough and ready debut. Tremendous stuff. You need to seek it out. Next one, a record people would be surprised that you purchase. Now, I generally buy kind of hard rock or new wave stuff or punk stuff, really. But I found this in a charity shop for a fiver. This is Julian Cope, Peggy Suicide, which is a double album. It only cost £5, and it has some really interesting stuff on it, including a song that is really just super psychedelic, actually, the guitar playing on it, called Safe Surfer. This is not my normal stuff, actually, so I was quite pleased to pick that up. It was just a kind of a random buy, really, because it was such a bargain for a double, so there you go. Next one is an artist or band you're complete on. Well, that's a number of bands, actually. Rory Gallagher I mentioned earlier, Deep Purple, and all the kind of associated bands of Rainbow, Whitesnake, Gillan, and so on. But I'm also complete on this band as well, Blue Oyster Cult. So I saw this band in Bournemouth in fact, there's the programme, in 1978, where Japan supported them bizarrely, and they were dreadful. But I bought this single just after I saw them live. But before I saw them live, this was the first album I bought by them, and I absolutely love this. This is On Your Feet or On Your Knees, double live album from Blue Oyster Cult in the kind of mid-70s. Tremendous stuff, really, really good album. Great band live too. Next one is a run of 3 albums. So I could have used this band for the Australian album, actually, the Australian band. I've seen this band 3 or 4 times, and for me, these are their 3 greatest albums. So the band is AC/DC. So this is their first one from '77, which is Let There Be Rock, which is just raw and wonderful. This next album is this one. This is the UK version of it. There is a different US version of it, actually, which has Rock and Roll Damnation on it. This one is slightly rawer in its sound, actually, as well, but I love this album. Kicked in the Teeth is just fantastic hard rock song, amazing. And the one that followed that is Highway to Hell, which I think is a superb album. Saw them on that tour. In fact, I was at Bon Scott's last ever concert in Southampton in 1980. Next one is an 80s soundtrack. I've only got probably one 80s soundtrack, and it was from a film that's just had a sequel come out, actually, and it's this one, Top Gun. So this has got some absolutely anthemic stuff on it. So Danger Zone, Mighty Wings by Cheap Trick is fantastic. Through the Fire, Larry Green, who I don't know who Larry Green is, but it's a great song. It also has the Top Gun anthem, which is written by Harold Faltermeyer and features Steve Stevens, who's probably better known as the guitarist from Billy Idol, but it's a wonderful tune, actually. So there's my favourite 80s soundtrack album. Number 14, we lost them in 2022. So we lost the lead singer and bass player, Burke Shelley, from the album Budgie. This is their debut album. Tremendous album. There's Burke Shelley in the middle. Very distinctive voice, very high, really distinctive voice, and a hugely underrated band. Interesting band. They had some really bizarre song titles. So on here we've got New Disintegrating Parachutist Woman, which is a great song, actually. But they also produced, this is I think their best album, In for the Kill. This features Zoom Club, Crash Course in Brain Surgery. Great album. And the title track is incredibly good. They're hugely influential, although not very successful, hugely influential. And they reinvented themselves around about the 80s, early 80s, 1980, I think, when the new wave of British heavy metal was coming to the fore. And this is their kind of very new wave of British heavy metal album. This is Power Supply. And I saw them in 1980 at Reading, actually. Great band. Number 15, disappointing purchase in 2023, without doubt. It's my only piece of new vinyl, and I'm a big Deep Purple fan, but this album is an absolute lemon. This is a bunch of covers. It's got bands, it's got tracks by Little Feat on it, Love, Yardbirds, Cream. It's just dreadful. But as a collector, you've got to get it. So anyway, there you go. That's Turning to Crime by Deep Purple. Absolute crime. Non-vinyl purchase. So I'm going to show a book. This is by Martin Popoff called Smoking Valves. It's a guide to 900 new wave of British heavy metal records. It's a fantastic book. Sadly not in colour, which probably would bump the price up. But loads and loads of singles and albums of bands that came out around about 79 up to about 84. A really interesting movement and genre, the new wave of British heavy metal. I was, really into music at that time, and I've seen a huge number of these bands: Diamond Head, Def Leppard, AC, Iron Maiden, Angel Witch, Praying Mantis, I was at Silverwing. I've seen all of those kind of bands, either as headliners or support acts. So really interesting book. There's a couple of others as well. Martin Popoff, incredibly good books actually, very, very comprehensive, highly recommended. You Found a Grail. Just thinking about the new wave of British heavy metal, there's a single I found the other day actually by Mithra. I think they produced very little in their time. Potentially this might have been the only single they did do. This is the Death and Destiny EP from 1979 on Guardian Records. So I don't know if it's a grail, but it's a single I've been looking for a long time, and I found it the other day for a really good price. So really pleased to pick that up. Next one is a space-themed album sleeve or song. So I'm going to pick an album, and it's this one. This is Canadian trio Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush and their album World Anthem. Now, I don't know if many of you have heard of this guy. For me, he is without a doubt one of the best hard rock guitar players out there. This is not his best album, although it's got a couple of really, really good songs. Requiem for a Sinner being a really good example of that. But he played as a trio. He was often put down as a Hendrix copyist really, but he was much more than that, and he produced in 78, this should have been a double, but a single album that is without a doubt one of the best live albums of all time, in my opinion anyway. So tremendous. Couple of covers on there, some blues stuff, some just wonderful guitar moments. But if you haven't heard of Frank Marino, or you haven't heard much, really worth looking out for. Last couple of questions. Number 19 is a show a present. So 50 years ago, I received a present from my gran, and it was the first record I ever owned, and it was Tiger Feet by Mud. So that's 50 years old this year, and that was a present from my nan. I've still got exactly the same copy. And then show an album released in 73. Now I could have chosen this one, which is without doubt one of my favourite album covers. That's Ooh La La by The Faces. Tremendous stuff. But one of my favourite albums from that year, because there are so many to choose from, as there is in all of the years in the 70s. But this album is tremendous. So this is Mike Bloomfield, Al Cooper and Stephen Stills Super Sessions. It's a blues masterclass. Again, if you like your blues or you like your guitar playing, you need to seek this out. It's wonderful stuff. So there you go, VC. There's my 20 answers to the 20 questions posed by Rob. Tell me what you think in the comments below. It's good to be back, and we'll catch up again soon. Cheers.